This is a lot of stuff. Coach Massi here, CEO of M2 Speed, Strength, and Performance, with another episode of Move Your Feet. And today is actually the basics of ground reaction forces for training. Episode number 8, we like to call it the wrap-up, or so we hope. Really, it never ends when we're talking about this subject, but today we're going to try to bring a few things back together based on some viewer inquiries and just try to put this to bed for now. And then, listen, if it resurfaces later on this year or next year, we'll keep coming back to it. But for today, I just wanted to take a viewer's question and kind of throw this out as a way to wrap this entire subject up. Viewer says, Coach Guy and Matt, thanks so much for this awesome series on ground reaction forces for training. What cost-effective methods would you recommend to maximize or magnify ground reaction force potential for training? That's signed Peter Piestamonte, Charlotte, North Carolina. Well, Peter, I'm going to try to address that best I can. Cost-effective, kind of subjective, but we do have some ways we think that we could help you. So I'm going to call in Coach Matt. And what we're going to try to get accomplished today, Matt, is we're going to try to put out a couple of different methods. You know we're going to wind up defaulting to the tsunami bar because it's all about reversal forces and magnifying the potential for ground reaction force. But we did want to address at least a couple of cost-effective methods. So first thing you might think about is what? Just add weight to yourself, right? So Newton's third law, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. If you just want to raise the potential for more ground reaction forces, I guess you could just add more weight. So one of the things you can do is, and we'll just stick with the simplest, right? Counter movement jumps for your client. Now Matt is effectively 20 pounds heavier, which means you have the potential for 20 pounds more ground reaction force to utilize. It'll be there, whether or not you utilize it through some good ground contact times, up to you. Show them what it looks like just hugging a medicine ball. Super simple stuff, right? This is a very low-cost option. These balls seem to last forever, as you can tell by the color, right? That's the older version of the Perform Better medicine ball, PB Extreme ball. Another way you could do it is if somebody has a hook platform, you could hook some bands in and do shoulder-based resistant counter movement jumps. And of course, you'll have a little bit more drag and a little bit more potential ground reaction force. But listen, in our opinion, the tsunami bar has sort of revolutionized the industry and is very safe for us. Nobody's doing jumps with barbells on their back around here anymore. Very rarely will you find anybody doing jumps with dumbbells, and maybe some trap bar, hex bar, deadlift jumps. But I mean, look, it's here, it's available. So we default to the tsunami bar because it offers amplitude, oscillation, and angle of deflection. And I guess this bar up front would kind of give you the best idea. We're not going to load it on Maddie yet, but what the angle of deflection is would be sort of from this midpoint here to the ends, and how much flex or bend there is in the bar will give you the angle of deflection. And then when you talk about oscillation around a center point, the amplitude of that oscillation would be representative of a lot of action, feedback, reversal forces that you're trying to overcome with these bars, and that's why we love them. So I think to answer one of Pete's questions would be, let's just throw a lighter load on your back with the lighter tsunami bar. So this is what they call the SG, or standard grip 50. It takes up to 50 pounds on the bar. And right now, we only have it loaded at 15 pounds per side. This bar is a little squirrely in a great sense because you're going to have a great angle of deflection. And it's going to be commensurate upon the less ground contact time, the more force the athlete puts in the ground. And you're teaching them to capitalize before that bar starts to come back up, to drive up and through and create some reversal forces that really help. Okay? So, Maddie, let's get like 5 counter movement jumps and try to limit the ground contact time, but really push up through the bar. Hit it. Boom. As soon as it comes down, it's pushing up through that bar. And as you can see, that bar is relatively light, so you're not going to have a ton of angle of deflection. oscillation or amplitude, but it's a good starting point. So how do we raise the degree of difficulty? What variable can we put right in? Well, we could add more weight to the bar, definitely. But what we like to do is, we like to get our clients and athletes understanding really what that first drop into the movement entails. Because even if you're on the ground in contact, you're putting force into the ground before you get force back. And we want to sort of let them understand what it is to hit the ground, initiate force, and then immediately try to capitalize on that. So Matt's going to basically perform, we call it just like a modified dropout or a modified depth jump. He's not going to step off with one leg. He's going to drop down to the ground, hit, and then capitalize and overcome the bend of that bar or the forces that he's putting into the ground. Go ahead, Matty. Boom, and then up. Good. Now, how do we make that movement a little more difficult? How might we get a metric? Keep that on your back for 1 second, Matt. Like I said, always unscripted. The poor guy has no idea what's going to happen while we're filming. So get on back there. Matt, step down and let's go. 1, 2, let's get 3 counter movement jumps there to get the speed of that bar up. Down he comes. 1, 2, 3. Boom, beautiful. And we're going to show you a method at the end on how to sort of calculate or think about calculating angle of deflection from the center of the bar to the ends so you can start building some great metrics aside from just the time that he lands to the time he takes off and then the subsequent ground reaction time on his foot strike. So that bar you can take off and put it off to the side, please. Now, we're going to take the same bar and we're going to load it to its max. So it says maximum load is 50 pounds or 25 pounds per side. We've been known and guilty of overloading these bars for maximal angle of deflection and really overcoming that angle of deflection. But today we're going right at what the manufacturer recommends, our friends at Tsunami Bar. And Matt, let's not even get up on that yet. Just show them the difference of what it is to see the angle of deflection by adding just another 10 pounds per side. And Maddie's going to do those same 5 counter movement jumps. And this would be a good spot to mention if you're building metrics. It's the same bar with 10 more pounds per side. That's where you're going to be looking at his ground contact times. You can also look at his hang times, okay? Go ahead, Maddie. Do 5 counter movements. Good. And really push through the bar. Push through it. Good. You see he's having to overcome that angle of deflection. He's pulling some reversal forces there. And the next thing we want to do is if you see somebody can execute counter movement jumps that way, nice degree of difficulty, nice variable is, boom, up the ante, get them on a box. Most people are not going to progress right to a 12-inch box. And Maddie, you can actually conduct drop down into 1, and then we'll drop down into 3. So modified depth jump, boom, bang, and 1, and boom. Now what's really nice too, if you refer to the previous episode, as he gets his breath, we talked about that eccentric control required, that you need to know how to land clean before you should jump, right? So Matt had a nice eccentric control dropout, and then he drove through with a jump. And it actually wasn't a counter movement jump because it was only 1, so we're calling it a modified dropout or a modified depth jump into a squat jump. So I apologize for calling those single jumps counter movement jumps. They're not. It's a squat jump. Now we got counter movement jumps. He's going to go modified depth jump or dropout into 3 counter movement jumps. And boom. Bang, push, push, push. Beautiful. That's it. You can relax on that one. So in trying to answer some of Pete's questions here, there's a couple of different ways you could, maximize the potential of ground reaction forces or magnify that. And what I do want to show you guys is, we do get a lot of questions before you load that up, Matt, is about metrics. And I think, don't make that too tight, it won't spin on you. In Orlando, we did run into the issue of a lot of people asking questions about metrics, right? And what was another issue was it was difficult for people to time ground reaction time. And I think if you don't do that a lot, it may seem simple, but it's kind of an acquired skill. So when you start to time ground reaction time on your counter movement jumps or whatever it may be, we did a couple of progressions a few episodes back. We did the blue tape whenever we had the hit spots on time that. It's really tough to time. On your phone, what's nice is you can just keep hitting the split button, and then you can go back and you can actually just, do your calculations, subtraction to find out how long the time was. What we like doing around here, and it may sound, kind of primitive at times, is we'll actually just run our phones on notes, and, we'll just be calling it out, 0.51, 0.56, 0.57, whatever it is. We'll get it on record, and at the end of the night, whenever that is, we'll start to take our notes a little bit more copiously, and we'll start to plug those numbers into our metrics. But I did just want to get this up for you guys real quick to take a look at this. And these bars are not that expensive. They're actually less expensive than a competition barbell. So you guys should look into these. I think it would really revolutionize the way you guys train. So let me get this up, Maddie. I know it's a little uncomfortable. So we were talking about cost-effective ways, and I'm going to stay behind him so you guys can see. This is probably the most cost-effective way to build metrics, aside from some really excellent software out there that people are developing now. We're talking to about 6 different outfits, groups that want us to quote-unquote endorse their software. So we're testing some of them. One of the things we always want to make sure is that whatever we bring you guys, it is affordable. Okay. We understand when we have elite athletes and elite clientele, you do have to have some technology. We do have a lot of technology, but we don't really advertise it a lot because we want to bring a message to you guys that you can get this done with some rather primitive methods, and we just want to at least get you thinking, right? I always say, I don't have all the answers, but I most certainly will provoke thought. So let's take a look at this. So from the bar to the top of this ping pong ball is exactly 12 inches, okay? Now, if this were actually one of our metric bars, which it's not, we just had to grab what we had in this part of the studio because we have other things going on in the main training facility. So what we would do is we have a white marker here, and what we would do is we would either take our tape, something super primitive, some people put white out on the end of these bars, whatever it may be, whatever you can do to identify from 12 inches to the end of this bar, plus a little bit of the lag that starts here, which you can measure, which is normally about a ½ inch as it goes down a decline. You could start getting metrics by just doing calculations from 12 inches and the angle of deflection you have when you play it back in slow motion. So Maddie, just show them like 5 jumps with that, if you don't mind. And rest. And as you can see, amazingly enough, this stays in a pretty good position. It didn't hop around too much. So you could begin some calculations knowing that this is exactly 12 inches off the bar. You get your decline or your slope differentiation, your deviation, and then you would have your marks on the end of the bar. Just something we wanted to put out there. Maddie, you can take that off. I know that's a little uncomfortable. And then you can get off camera. Thanks for not breaking the ping pong ball. So we just want to get you guys thinking, of course. That is the wrap-up for the basics of ground reaction forces for training. This has been episode number 8. We do entire weekend seminars on nothing but ground reaction forces for training, which is inclusive of speed training, agility, and how to get the most out of those training protocols. Because we're big what equals what guys. We have to know what equals what, and we're not just going to do, perform, conduct protocols and progressions just to get somebody sweaty or fatigued. So until the next time I see you, Coach Massi here, CEO of M2, Speed, Strength, and Performance. Greatness is forged, not fabricated, and that's your day.